A 12-year-old boy, I'll call Sam, sits in my office, giving me the side eye. He has his first appointment, and he really doesn't want to be there. He's getting C's and D's in school and being reprimanded by his teachers. At home, there are three-hour homework battles, slammed doors, and frequent arguments, and he's no longer getting invitations to birthday parties. Sam is constantly getting the message that he's the problem, and his self-talk, I'm no good, everybody hates me, has gotten very negative. And Sam is angry and depressed. But he's also hanging in. He's going to school, keeping his head above water. He's resilient, but not in a good way. And the only coping mechanism he's practicing is avoidance, which video games provide. Nothing like being good at Fortnite to help a child feel like he's fitting in. Now, if we could wave a magic wand and go back to see when Sam was very young, what we'd likely see is a boy who was really motivated. But then Sam started to slam into an invisible wall. It could be undiagnosed ADHD that stops his momentum and causes him a lot of frustration. When Sam experiences this frustration enough times, he starts to anticipate failure and develops a sense of learned helplessness. I can't. This situation leads to a host of other problems: academic failure, family arguments, depression. So by the time I see 12-year-old Sam, I'm attempting to untangle problems that have become like a tightly knotted fishing line. Imagine giving a child a helmet after she's gotten a concussion, instead of while she's learned to ride a bike. This is the way we currently deliver mental health care to our children. And nationwide surveys are not encouraging on how well that's going. The median age for the onset of anxiety is 6, and ADHD is 11. Yet, only 15 to 25% of children with mental health issues receive treatment. And why is that? While dedicated pediatricians follow well-established, well-child guidelines, respond to parent concerns, and check for developmental disorders at annual wellness visits, there are zero required mental health checks until a child is 12, and then only for depression. Considering over half of all mental health issues occur before the age of 14, to borrow an outdated term from my industry, that's just plain crazy. Thanks for that. But at least we're catching depression, right? Nope. Even for those kids who have depressive disorders, only 40% receive treatment. A director of a large local pediatric practice confirms the problem. Quote, "We routinely check developmental progress, but from 30 months to 12 years, we don't screen for mental health issues. We just don't have the time," she said. The current mental health system is failing our children, and we can do better. The solution? I propose we turn well-child visits into whole child visits that include a mental health check with an experienced mental health professional. Mental health professionals could relieve the unfair burden placed on schools and pediatricians and offer more support for families. These annual visits will allow an on-site psychotherapist to track a child's mental health in the same way a pediatrician tracks a child's physical health and development. And because mental health checks would become a routine and accepted part of wellness, this would go a long way in helping to alleviate the stigma of mental health issues. Plus, they would help children to talk about their feelings more. But most importantly, children and their parents would receive the treatment they need and the support they need when they need it, so common mental health issues don't go undiagnosed or become ingrained and more complex. So families wouldn't have to say, as I've heard them say so often after years of struggle and frustration, that they wish they'd come to me much sooner. A pediatric office that integrates physical and mental health checks could have helped David before he started having suicidal thoughts. Great kid. This sensitive and intelligent young man was pale, anxious, and depressed. He ran track and complained about being tired all the time. And also said that his heart raced even when he was resting. What looked like depression, anxiety, or both turned out to be a failing thyroid. After collaborating with his doctor, David's anxiety and depression disappeared. He's now excelling in school. Oh, and consider Becca, lovely Becca, who had yelled at her teacher and pushed several other students to the ground. Every week, Becca had long tantrums and repeatedly went to the nurse for stomach aches. But Becca could also be motivated, polite, and funny. We had a great time. As it turns out, Becca felt panicked in large groups. The slightest hints of rejection cascaded her into a fight-or-flight response. Becca was practicing the only coping mechanism she knew how and asking for help the only way she knew how. Imagine if Becca had been able to share her feelings of anxiety earlier, and we'd be able to help teach her age-appropriate strategies to better manage her stress. Let's enable therapists to get ahead of problems instead of being left to react to them. Let's enable therapists to get ahead of problems instead of being left to react to them. Enable therapists to help families to identify early signs of concern, even before a crisis makes a problem diagnosable. By looking at a child's response to ordinary situations at home. Therapists, for example, could help families spot their child's emotional and behavioral tells. A tantrum, for instance, is a child's language of distress, but can be easily dismissed as normal. A therapist could help parents and children decode this language by asking them to describe their child's behavior 1 minute, 15 minutes, 60 minutes before a meltdown. Instead of focusing on the tantrum, they could get at its cause, possibly hunger, lack of sleep, or overstimulation. Or a therapist could ask what happens when a child is sent up to bed alone. If she's reluctant to go up alone, it might be an indicator of anxiety. Or if she goes up alone and doesn't get ready for bed, it might indicate she needs some help with executive function skills, those cognitive abilities that allow us to have control over our emotions and behavior and our memory. An integrated whole child visit would allow therapists not only to identify potential problems, but also help address them. They could work collaboratively with pediatricians and parents to be a resource, offering strategies and advice, making referrals, prioritizing treatment options, and checking back in about the effectiveness of the suggested strategies. This is particularly important now. We're in the middle of a huge epidemic of anxiety. Our children are living in a world of constant on, and their brains and their bodies get fatigued. They fall into patterns of anticipating failure, reacting to minor signs of distress with a fight-or-flight response. What is far worse, they don't know how to practice problem solving by pushing forward. Let's return to my friend Sam. If Sam had gotten whole child visits, a psychotherapist might have asked his parents to describe what it's like for him to learn to ride a bike. Learning to ride a bike takes courage, determination, and multitasking. There are almost always falls. A question like this could reveal Sam's difficulty with frustration tolerance. A therapist could then offer Sam tools for better success, helping him slow down, take a step back, and try out other options. This would change Sam's self-talk from "it's impossible" and "I can't" to a new, more positive story. Faced with this next challenge, Sam can build on the previous success and develop more positive resilience. Identified early enough, barriers that children face offer wonderful opportunities for them to develop useful life tools, like emotional intelligence, flexibility, frustration tolerance, safe risk-taking, delayed gratification, and the ability to learn from their mistakes. Whole child visits could support children in this practice and better prepare them for the stressors in their lives, especially in today's fast-paced online world. Kids are exposed to cyberbullying, pornography, and sexting when they're not developmentally ready and have limited time to process. Giving our kids the right tools at the right time can avoid more serious, complicated problems from developing, changing their narrative from negative to positive, and building their resilience. But the timing matters. I'm just going to say that again. The timing matters. Whole child visits that integrate medical, emotional, and educational supports would facilitate early and effective mental health care for our children and provide the greatest long-term benefit. Let's give our children that helmet as they learn to ride, not after the concussion. Thank you.